security. Most of you will have seen this or be familiar with it. It's the Security Awareness Maturity Model, and it was created in 2011 by 200 cybersecurity people who got together collectively to look at security awareness as a problem. And regardless of how you feel, I mean, some people love it and some people absolutely hate it, but regardless of how you feel about this maturity model, what it gives you is the criteria for each maturity stage and the steps that you need to take to mature your security awareness program. So then it's over to you to understand the stakeholders within your organisation and the motivations that they have. So for example, some boards will be constantly talking about what the competitors are doing. And if they are motivated by competitors and what they're up to, then the Cybersecurity Awareness Maturity Model gives you that benchmark of what are my competitors doing, what level of maturity they are, how many people are working on this on a full-time basis. And then looking at the steps of how to improve to get to the next level of maturity, you can just highlight those and get board engagement in this type of thing. Now, the key question is how do you get funding for that? Because what we need is money. 10% of security IT budgets is spent on security, and a tiny, tiny percentage is spent on securing people. So the key question, how do you get funding? So you need to consider the financial implications for everything. So that's cost versus benefit, that's value for money, and consider all of the costs associated with the program. You need to think about things like burn rate and how quickly you're going to get through that cash and when you're going to need to come back and ask for additional investment in that. So the things to consider around financials is things like tooling, the people that you need, and that's people within your financial influence and outside of your financial influence. So that could be if you need someone in IT to implement a tool, or you need some internal comm support for 1 hour a month. What does that look like and how much does that cost? Now, the other important thing is lost income. Now, cyber incidents do result in a loss of income. And so there is a cost to do versus a cost not to do. Kind of tried to highlight this in the graph. So cost of incidents come down when you invest in security, behaviour and culture change. So security incidents do impact on the business bottom line, and if you can evidence that really clearly, then there's no reason why you can't get that financial support for your program, but you really need to look at the facts and figures and cost that out. Now, as you've wandered around over the last couple of days, everyone will have told you that they have got the silver bullet in security awareness. They will tell you this is the thing that everyone's going to engage in with, is the best thing on the market. And what that is a lie, because vendors will lie to you. There is no silver bullet. There is a bullet-shaped bunch of shrapnel that you then need to put together into something. So how do you see the wood for the trees? Well, what's really important is to understand what's important for your organisation and not what the vendors are telling you is important. So how you do that is to interview your stakeholders across the organisation and look at the audience profile within your workforce, because no organisation is the same and they're all made up of different people. Every organisation has a different branding, identity, and a different tone of voice that they expect to use within the organisation. So you need to really get to grips with that and understand it. Remember that regardless of what security people think, they do not represent the makeup of the business. They might think they do, but they absolutely don't. So if you gather up a cross-section of the organisation and form a focus group, what you can do is then put together a wish list. Unfortunately, my slide's gone a bit wonky here, but if you have a wish list, what you can do is look at the offerings that vendors are telling you that they have and score each solution against your wish list and then choose something that works for the organisation. But remember that vendors are going to lie to you. If the vendor is telling you the truth and they do exactly what they say they're going to do, there is absolutely no reason why they won't give you a demo or a trial account, access to technical documentation, pen test reports, case studies, or introduce you to customers that do similar things or have rolled out the same sort of program. Now, they might ask you to sign an NDA And that's a bit of hassle, right? But the hassle of an NDA is far better than getting into a relationship with a vendor who's not been honest with you for 3 years. So it's worth the hassle doing it. So, now, if I drove my car for 20 minutes once a year, would I be a safe driver? Absolutely not. Would not be. Yet we seem to assume that if we do annual security awareness training for 20 minutes every year, we have a safe workforce. We don't. 20 minutes of annual training is not secure behaviour and culture change. Secure behaviour and culture change is a decrease in phishing clicks. There's a number of questions asked to security before an incident happens. So it's things like, is it okay if I take my laptop to China over the summer when I visit my family? And it's an increase in suspicious event reports. So that's people come into security saying, I've seen something and I'm a bit concerned about it, what should I do? Before the incident occurs. What's really important is to look at incident root causes. And when you look at the common themes within the incidents that are occurring in your organisation and come up with a plan to solve those problems and reduce the likelihood of those incidents occurring through behaviour and culture change, then you're winning. But metrics is not a completion stat. If I drove my car from point A to point B, I may have achieved the goal. But what you don't know is that I've mowed down 4 pedestrians on the way. So have I successfully done anything other than tick a box to say I did something? It doesn't work. So I don't advocate for a rinse and repeat security awareness programme. And the reason is that every day, every one of us is uncovering new threats, new scams and new vulnerabilities. So when you roll out the same thing year on year, what you're doing is you're not preparing your staff for the latest in threats, vulnerabilities and scams. So you don't have a secure workforce. So if you cannot be bothered to spice it up, then don't bother at all. There's no point to the programme. Year on year annual repeats, all they do is assess knowledge retained. And it's not knowledge retained from year 1 to year 2. It's knowledge retained for something I just showed you 5 minutes ago. And I'm sure you could have a thing that one of the slides I showed you and describe that. But could you remember a slide that I showed you a year ago? Probably not. Secure behaviour and culture is continual reinforcement, and it's not actually that hard to do. It doesn't cost the earth to do it. You can do things like BuzzFeed type articles, like 15 things you didn't know about email spam filters, or 10 ways to protect your credit card information. They're really easy to write, and people are interested because it's clickbait. And we know that clickbait works because we're constantly telling people don't click on stuff. And they're always going to do the clicking. So if they're going to click, turn that into a positive click where there's some kind of gossipy thing that they're going to engage with. But the bottom line is that staff don't actually care. They don't care about the security of your organisation because they've got you guys. You are the security people that are paid to protect them. And quite often you get in their way, whether you think you do or not. You're telling them not to do stuff, which stops them from doing what they want to do. You tell them don't download that shadow IT, but they still do it. So the reason that staff don't care is because they don't believe they're actually a target. The company might be a target, but me as an individual, I'm not a target. So if people don't care about their own personal security because they're not a target, how will they ever care about your organisation's security? So that's the trick, is getting them to care about stuff. You need to talk about things that happen both inside and outside of the work. And that's the thing that a lot of people miss. So, I've got a couple of people on this slide here. And as you can see, they've all got different motivations. And because they've got different motivations, they will all engage differently with what you do in your company. They'll engage with different TV programs, different radio programs. They're all motivated by different things. So if you can't understand an audience profile, you can't influence them and you can't motivate them to engage with things. If you consider Tesco, they've got an offer on for pizza, you are going to hear about that in multiple ways. You might see a TV ad, you hear a radio ad, you might get a flyer through the door, you'll see web advertising, and you'll see an in-store promotion. And the reason that Tesco do that is because what they're trying to do is convert people who are, one, in the market for a pizza, and two, people who've popped in for a pint of milk who don't know what they're having for their tea yet. So they do these things and it costs them quite a lot of money, but the return that they make on the pizza is worth the advertising investment, so it kind of works in the same way. Now, your organisations will spend time, money, effort in profiling their staff, and profiling their customers. And the reason they do that is because by profiling the customers and understanding what motivates and engages them, you drive more money into the business, and then you've got more cash for bonuses and what have you. So it's worth doing. Now, if we remember back, here's a little test. Do you remember something I showed you 5 minutes ago? The cost of a data breach is around about $4.35 million, according to IBM. So if you spent time and effort profiling the staff within your organisation, you'd save, I'm not allowed to do any swearing, but I'm going to do it anyway, you would save a shit ton of cash in disaster recovery. So, how do you understand the people in your workforce? You can go to HR teams or people teams as they're now named. You can go to your internal comms team and ask them, what profiling have you done? What is the makeup of the organisation like? And unfortunately, I have been around the block enough to tell you they don't do that. So what do you do then? You need to climb outside of your security or compliance bubble and go to the natural environment of these people. Go and hang out in the smoking shelters. I spend a lot of time in smoking shelters listening to people, because that's when you hear what they really care about and what's really going on in the world. Hanging out in the kitchen and just listening to people and not talking, just hearing what they've got to say is how you understand how to engage and motivate them. And it's well worth the effort because you're going to save the money in disaster recovery. Now, I can imagine most of you have been told gamification solves everything. Because gamification is the answer to all of our prayers. Let's go and do it now. Right? But what I wanted to explain to you is gamification doesn't mean the same thing to all people. I cannot stand organised fun. If you invite me to anything fun, I'm not coming. I will be sick, I will be washing my hair and not getting involved in that. And if you consider neurodivergent individuals, when you enforce gamification on somebody who has an attentional difficulty, what you're doing is creating stress and anxiety for them because it's not a natural environment for them. It gives them too many stimuli, which is the exact opposite of what you want to achieve in security behaviour and culture change, or even security awareness. I don't think gamification works long term either. If I think back to the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory films, there's 5 golden tickets available. And there's loads of people buying these Wonka bars so they can get the golden ticket. But at the point where the golden tickets have been claimed or perceived to have been claimed, people stop buying the Wonka bars. So how do you engage long-term in gamification? How many of you here buy a book before you go on holiday? Do you reread that book? We've got 2 yeses and everyone else said no. Right. Do you donate that book? We've got a yes for donate. Yeah, a couple of yeses and a no. I donate books, and the reason that I donate books is because I have OCD. Books are not uniform in shape and size, so they freak me out. So I do buy a book, but I can't keep it. I'll read it and then it has to go away. So that's the same sort of thing as the neurodiversity that I was just talking about. It causes me stress and anxiety. So long term, a book is not the thing for me. Much like gamification is not the thing for me. Back in 2001, I spent 18 hours playing Resident Evil on PS1. I completed Resident Evil, and I was very proud of myself. So proud, in fact, that 22 years later, I'm standing here telling you I completed Resident Evil in 18 hours. Yet I have never since played Resident Evil. I don't know where the game is, and it doesn't interest me in the slightest. I also really like a Lego video game. I love smashing stuff and collecting the studs, and at the end of the video game, they give you the chance to go back and score 100%. And I go back and I score 100%. And then I shove the game in a drawer and I never play it again. In contrast, gamification works really well for crisis management planning. because it gives you the opportunity to get into a room together or into an environment and play out the situation in a safe place, where you can collaborate with people that you might not have engaged with before. Post-incident reviews also work quite well with gamification, but the caveat is, what you end up in a gamification environment with is some people who that is their optimum environment and they absolutely love it, and then you've forced another bunch of people who it's an alien concept to them and they don't like it, they don't feel comfortable in that space. So people who are really confident with gamification environments will have really big voices, and they'll overshadow the people who don't feel comfortable in that environment. And I don't want to offend anyone, but people with big voices have nothing interesting to say. They just are chest beating. And it's the people who need a little bit more time to process that are a little bit quieter, that actually have really, really good ideas, and it's worth listening to them. So I don't know how you solve the problem with gamification long term. I'm not going to give you the answer. I don't think it's the answer to all of our prayers. I don't know how to solve it. But my assumption is, if we think about a video game, it would need to be like FIFA. It's good because FIFA are constantly releasing new versions and add-ons and new players and things like that. But that involves having a huge amount of money to invest in those developments. And as we discovered, 10% of IT budgets is spent on cyber, and a tiny, tiny percentage is spent on protecting humans. So, honestly, don't know what the answer is. So I'm very, very rarely given the option to choose how I want to learn. And if I do get the choice, I'm given a classroom environment or an online environment, and that's it, that's the only option. The classroom environment is not for me. I am an introvert and I have a huge, huge fear of public speaking. So I spend the entire time sweating and hoping that someone doesn't ask me 3 interesting things about myself, because there are no interesting things in that moment. So I then go for online learning, but online learning doesn't work for me either. I mean, it's cheaper, so that's a benefit. But my brain is really busy and cluttered, so I don't pay attention in an online learning environment. I just skip through as quickly as I can so I can get to the quiz and prove that I've gained the knowledge to be successful in that task. And that's what security awareness is today, is get through it as quickly as you can, pass the quiz, job done. So at Culture Gem, we carried out some research into learning styles to try and understand how we can solve this problem. And so I'm going to run through a few statements from our research, and I don't mean to stereotype or offend anyone. I'm just going to go through the facts and figures of what we found out. Those over 50s are really, really tired of being forced to do something us young people think is cool. They just want to do the training. Autistic respondents find that interactive elements within e-learning or training is too stimulating, and they much prefer to read or listen to something without all of the distractions. Those in their 30s want to learn by osmosis. They don't want to know that they're learning. They want the learning experience to be enjoyable and it be a subliminal process. The knowledge goes in, but they haven't tried. And people with visual stress disorders such as dyslexia, they just find the whole process really, really challenging because it's not set up for them. So what we did with that research is we developed an e-learning solution where all compliance is in one place, and we give the learner the choice of 8 different learning styles and in 11 different colours most commonly used by those with visual stress disorders. So we have things like, we've got a couple of video games for the people who think that's cool. We have box standard e-learning that you'll see from all of our competitors. We have stuff that you can just listen to, and you can choose whether it's a male or female voice, because people have a preference on whether they want to listen to a male or female voice. My dad will not listen to a female voice because he perceives that they are nagging him. So he will always choose a male voice. We have things you can just read with no fancy stuff, just words on a page. We have presentation style videos, a couple of news reports. So we've got a really gossipy, funny, breaking news story for the TikTok generation who quite like that kind of thing. So with Culture Gem, we give the learner the choice over how they want to learn and in what colour. security awareness is not security behaviour and culture change. Security awareness is a tick box exercise. It is a way to say I am compliant with something, but it doesn't solve any problems. So how do you move forwards? Identification of risk will be the deciding factor of whether you fail or succeed in this. You need to build really, really strong relationships with incident response and risk teams so that you get a constant feed of information. Because when you have that feed of information, what you can do is mitigate against actuals and not hypothetical things or something a vendor told you was the right thing to do. When you mitigate against actuals, what you do is you mature security and you mature people and you mature the business. And to affect any kind of change, you need to understand stakeholder motivations. If you don't understand that, you're not getting anywhere. So I'm just going to run through a couple of quick wins with you and easy ways you can roll out security, behaviour and culture change. So creativity is crucial for security, behaviour and culture change. Not all of us need to be creative to be able to do this. Creativity is not that expensive. Everything you can see on this slide was made for free using Shadow IT. I'm allowed to do that because I'm the boss. You need to make friends with creative people within the organisation. That's the creative team, just anyone who's got any kind of creative juices in them. And they will be willing to help you. You may think that they're not going to help you, but their jobs are really boring. They do the same stuff all the time, the same colours, the same font, the same graphics. So when you give them something juicy like how can you spot a fish, they're going to get really excited and help you out with it. People remember stuff that's subliminally drip-fed to them. So that's things like pizza adverts, gifts, stuff that you see on the back of toilet doors. I mean, you all remember Ask Angela. So it works. Putting stuff above a kettle when someone's got a few moments to just stand and digest something really works. But what if you don't have that creativity in your organisation, then find a vendor that offers you supplementary content that is creative, and then you don't have to create something in-house. You have a constant stream of information that you can use to roll out campaigns and build awareness of certain topics. Another thing that I find works really, really well is speaker sessions. And I know what you're thinking, they don't take my training, they're not coming to talks, right? So how do you get that to happen? Well, what you need to do is make them really sexy because people are intrinsically nosy and they'll wander past out of curiosity. I mean, I can see people wandering past and stopping now. So it's your job to keep them there when they have wandered past. So building a really, really good relationship with your internal comms team is the way to do this because they'll find a way of drumming up interest and they might bring some goodies so people get sweets and cakes and that sort of stuff. I recently ran a one hour lunch and learn session on security horror stories. I went through things that had actually happened to my friends and family and the consequences of those things. So, this person couldn't pay their rent for the month. So people can really relate to the problems. 10% of the company turned up for that lunch and learn session, and while 10% doesn't seem like a huge amount of people, the average click-through rate on a marketing email is 2.3%. So 10% is a huge amount of people. So my ask to you, all of you here today, is if someone asks you at this event or any event that you ever go to, can you come and talk to my staff about something you really care about? Say yes, because it's the right thing to do for the general population. When we get people to care about security, we create an army against cyber criminals. So it's the right thing to do for the nans, the granddads, the kids, the parents, the grandkids. So they're waving at me and telling me that I'm out of time now. So I just really, really wanted to say thank you. As I said, I've got a huge fear of public speaking, so thank you for coming and taking the time. I really appreciate it. I'm not sure if I have time for questions. Okay, I don't. I'm over at stand P20 just there. You can see my gems everywhere. Please come over and have a chat. I'm open to talking to all of you. But again, thank you so much for coming to talk to me, and thank you, James, for doing some coaching on public speaking for me.